Story 1. This is not supernatural creepy, but is one of the more disturbing and surreal experiences of my life. One early morning a few short years ago, I am walking to my bus stop and eating a banana. It is dark, misty, around 5 a.m., and I am internally debating something trivial, like if I want my daily Starbucks before or after the commute. As I approach the dimly lit corner on my street, a tall man in a black mask steps out of the dark alleyway to my left. Sleepy and disoriented, I barely acknowledge him. When he shouts, "Put down your fucking purse," and points his gun to my head, things start to click. The man says, "Put down your bags," and I tell him, okay, I'm putting them down over here." He orders me to walk over to him, toward the alley, and get down on the fucking ground, and I agree, I'm coming, okay. My heart is beating a million miles a minute and my hands still smell sticky with banana. I know I need to get away. I don't know why, but my mouth won't stop working. Look, see, I'm on the ground. My stuff is over there. Please just take my stuff, but he doesn't like it. Shut the fuck up, okay? He gets on top of me and puts the gun to my head. At this point, I should mention the fact that I'm on my way to coach a high school practice and I'm dressed like a dude. Huge baggy pants, hat, jacket. If not for my telltale voice, I'd look like a prepubescent 90s rap star. Anyway, as the guy gets on top of me, gun to my head, he looks at me and pauses. I can't tell you why I know this, but I swear that at this moment, it clicks for him that I'm a woman. He gets off of me, stands up, and points to the dark alley. Come with me. My stomach hurts. I remember that there have been a recent rash of sexual assaults in my neighborhood, during the daytime no less. When the man points down that dirty alleyway, my internal voice speaks the fuck up. Says voice number 1, "There was no way in hell you are going to go down there without a fight." "But he has a gun, you dipshit," replies voice number 2. "Fucking follow me," the real voice, his voice, hollers. So I do what I do best, I talk. "I'm coming, I'm following you." I call. And the man makes a crucial mistake, he believes me. I take 1, 2 tiny steps backwards, toward the sidewalk. And he turns his body, and his gun, toward the alley. This is my moment. I take a deep breath, tuck my head down in case he starts shooting, and start sprinting away. I hear a voice screaming in a high-pitched wail before I realize that it's mine. After running 6 or 7 blocks, I head back to my apartment, hoping he's not there to see where I lived. The police check out the alleyway an hour later, but the potential attacker is long gone. The only evidence of the encounter is my banana peel browning in the alleyway and the adrenaline rush that I couldn't shake for days. I would be lying if I said that if that experience doesn't bother me still, but I'm so fortunate to mainly be haunted by the what-ifs and not the what-dids. Way to listen to your intuition and be smart enough to watch him and make a choice in a split second. I know it's scary as fuck and your body goes into shock, unable to clear your mind. Story 2. I was sexually assaulted on the street about a month ago. I acted so quickly that the man was arrested and the police charged him with sexual assault within 15 minutes of the attack. Quick thinking is pretty powerful. Edit, I posted it here a while ago as well. But, for your sake, it was completely random attack. I had finished a great evening with one of my best friends and live in a large city, but never had anything violent or sketchy happen to me when walking home after the bar. I usually stick to busy, but too high traffic routes since I know men can and will pull up in a car if on too busy of a street, but quiet enough that if anything strange happened a resident of a home would notice. I picked this particular street knowing that there would be a police station I would need to pass. My mistake. I was walking north, literally 10 seconds away from the station listening to my music when I realized there was a man directly on my left. He must have been following me, and he put his hand on the small of my back, and then reached under the long raincoat I had on that looked like a dress. He groped my ass cheek and it all literally happened in a split second. A split second. I screamed, and jumped back. Up onto someone's lawn. I let him pass me, ripped out my earphone and screamed at him, "Do not touch me." You should never touch a woman like that, ever. I am calling the police. As I was yelling at him, I stayed on the lawn so he would pass in front of me. I quickly crossed the street while on the phone with 911. They got his description, and I told them exactly what he was wearing, height and race, hair color, and skin color. As I walked up to the station, 5 officers came out and I gave the description of the man again, and 2 officers got into a cruiser and followed the direction he went. I was very specific about what side of the street he was on, and many other details. What was incredibly lucky was that a woman and her partner were getting out of a cab the exact moment I yelped and jumped away. They both followed me to the police station and gave their sworn statement, separately of mine. As I was giving my statement, one of the officers that had chased him down came into the room to tell me they arrested him. I went home that night and cried my eyeballs out. Called my mom and told her. I slept that night, and spoke with another friend. All in all, it wasn't horrible and he was caught. The police followed up with me a few times, and gave me his conditions after being arrested and charged. He had to go to court and I am allowed to follow up with them to see what his sentence was. I don't really want to know. I'm afraid he would get acquitted or some weird administrative mistake might happen that he might not get sentenced, and I'd rather not know. Also, the fact that he made $10,000 bail the next day, I found out when the cops called me to follow up. I have his name in a document from the police, but I don't care. I don't want to know. Either way, I got him in a fuckload of trouble for at least 24 hours. Bleh. Terrible experience. Story 3. When I was in high school, I had a really good friend who lived next door to a house that was always up for sale. People would move out in the middle of the night without a word, and it hadn't had the same owner for more than 6 months straight for a couple of years. One night we were really bored and he suggested we go explore the house next door since it had sat empty for a while. We go around back and there's a dog door that he can crawl through, and he unlocks the door and lets me in. The house itself is really unremarkable. It looked like it was built in maybe the 1950s and was a craftsman-style house in an older, nicer part of town. My friend's house was similarly built. The kitchen had a really nice built-in breakfast table set against a picture window. The house's electricity was off, but you could see the street light through the window. My friend and I sit down, on the floor, across from this table, and are just hanging out, talking. Why? Who knows? All of a sudden my friend screams, and in that instant, my vision goes black. But it wasn't that I just couldn't see, my body was engulfed in this sickly coldness from head to toe. I start screaming and I feel my friend's hand grabbing mine and pulling me in some direction forcefully. My vision slowly comes back and I start to warm up when I realize that we're outside under the streetlight. It was December and should have been much warmer inside of that house. Finally I look at my friend and he looks scared. I'm really confused and kind of panicked myself and finally ask him what happened. He says that as I was talking, a black thing. This figure that was all black and only had the vague shape of a girl crawled out from under the table and sat on top of me. Apparently I started groping around with my eyes wide open, like I couldn't see, and he was so freaked out he pulled me out of the house. We're still friends and we bring it up every now and then, but the story itself never changes and it still sends chills down my spine. To this day, I've never felt such blackness or coldness in my life. It was palpable, almost sticky. For a couple of days afterward, I couldn't shake this unsettling feeling, and I could never walk past that house again. Ugh. I'm scared to get out of bed now. Story 4. Every time I stay at my grandma's house, I hear someone walking upstairs. It starts at one side of the room, casually walks to the other and stops. This will happen maybe twice a night. I didn't start hearing it until I was about 14, when my grandparents made me start sleeping in a different room on the first floor because they started sleeping in separate bedrooms. Blah blah blah, regardless both of their rooms are also on the first floor. For a little backstory, I have always been afraid of the upstairs at their house. I don't know why, but it's always freaked me out, and I refuse to ever go up there alone. I'm 23 now, still won't go up alone. There's one room specifically, though. It's a long, narrow bedroom. When you open the door, there are closets on your left and right, a bed placed roughly in the middle of the room, and a window on the far side opposite the door. I was told growing up by my grandparents that the sons of the previous owner claimed to see a gorilla come out of the closet at night, dance around the room, and go back into the closet. I thought nothing of this story until I had to start sleeping in the other room. The room located directly below the scary room upstairs, so we all go to bed. All the lights in the house are off and I'm still awake, lying on the bed. Then I heard it. Thump. 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 Starting at one end of the room upstairs. It got closer to me, passed right above me, and continued to the end of the room, where it stopped. I'm wide awake, terrified out of my mind. It was no question to me that I had heard footsteps. I knew that slow, casual pace. I was freaked out and went to my grandpa's room. I told him what I heard. He told me that the house is old and it creaks. But he turned the dining room light on for me, so I felt a little safer. I tried going back to sleep, then it started again, this time from where it ended the first time, by the window upstairs. It walks over me again and stops when it reached the door. I thought it was over until 5 seconds later when I heard it coming down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, silence as it reached the landing. Then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And silence again as it reached the first floor. I was frozen in shock. Whatever it was on my floor of the house, and sadly unaffected by the dining room light. I was staring at the doorway to my room, the dining room light was shining in, and my vision began to distort. I felt dizzy with fear, so I pulled the blankets over my head and suddenly heard a scratching sound from inside my room. I knew exactly where it was coming from, too, my grandpa's gun case. It was a very obvious sound, scratching on the wood. Long scratches down the front of the gun case door. I could even hear the door ever so slightly tapping against the frame as each scratch began. I tried to scream and I couldn't. I took a second to take a deep breath and let out a loud scream. In seconds my grandpa had made it to my room and I was relieved. Needless to say, he still didn't believe me. So I did what any normal person would do. I draped a sheet over the side of the bed and slept underneath it. I wrapped myself tight in a comforter, put on headphones, and turned my back to the door. There could be a party of ghosts in my room and I wouldn't even know. The next morning, my grandpa told my grandma about what happened the night before. She said, "Oh, that's silly. You know, your cousin woke me up the last time she stayed here. She came in my room saying, 'I hear footsteps.' I slept under the bed for the rest of my week stay with them. I've stayed there countless times since that happened, and I hear the footsteps every time. I sleep on top of the bed now, but keep my back to the door and sleep with headphones on. I haven't heard it come down the stairs since that first night, but if it does, I don't want to know." Story 5. My big brother used to have an imaginary brother and he would always play with him, but sometimes he would say, "Stop, leave me alone," or, "No, I don't want to go to my room to play." My mom would ask him, "What's going on?" And he would say, "He won't leave me alone." Of course my mom had no idea what he was talking about and thought it was just him being a kid with an imaginary friend. Well, a day after my brother's birthday he had these balloons, and keep in mind my brother is just a little kid and he's obviously not tall, so he couldn't reach the plates, knives, forks, etc. It was around 10 to 11 p.m. and my mom heard the balloons pop, so she went outside and my brother looked really scared, so my mom asked him, "What's happened? Did you pop the balloons?" And my brother said, freaking out, "No, it was him," pointing to his imaginary friend that my mom obviously couldn't see. My mom saw the knife next to the balloons and immediately knew that he was too short to reach any of those things, so she said, "Get out of my house," to my brother's imaginary friend. Since my mom couldn't see him, she asked my brother if he left already, and he said he had left and thanked my mom. Later, about 10 to 15 minutes later, my cousins came over and my cousin said that he saw a woman in all white with her hair in front of her face in the front door. My brother said that that was his mom and she opened the door. My cousins were already inside and asked my brother if she was still there and my brother said yes and that she was mad. She started to yell for her to get out and then she asked my brother if she was still here and he said no. My brother is now 19 and says he still sometimes sees him in his mirror. This happened when I was 12, I am a female, at a county club on the April 14th. This still creeps me out just thinking about it. My mom, sister's friend and I just arrived at the country club because I wanted to practice some drills in squash. We walk into the bar area to pay for the court and there is this lady with her son, at least I think it was her son, sitting on one of the bar stools. The woman looked about 25 to 30 years old and the son looked about 4 to 6 years old. She looked at our dog and was almost squeezing its neck. After that she looked at my mom and said hello and then looked at me dead in the eye. She walked towards and held out her hand. I took her hand to shake it but she didn't move it, she just kept her hand still and wouldn't let go. She started talking to me and asking me questions, but I have no clue what she said. She had so quiet and almost like she muttered the words. The only thing I could quite make out was the word medical. Then it was almost like time stopped and all the sound disappeared around me. The only thing I could hear was her quiet muttering. I told my mom I was going to the squash courts, but as I walked a few steps out of the doorway I felt these eyes watching me. My back was facing the doorway. I turned around and saw her watching me from inside the bar. After that I didn't feel safe enough to go to the squash courts alone, so I walked back to my mom and waited for her to finish paying. Fast forward to when I'm done playing squash and I played with my friend a bit. When I finished playing with my friend she went to go and put her squash things away on the court next door. When I went to my friend, we were the only ones at the squash court but my mom was walking inside. She was by the stands closing her squash bag. I saw the lady standing there by the side of the stands watching her. She muttered something but we both didn't hear what. She left the squash court when my mom got there and disappeared. I walked my friend to her parent and I quickly walked back to my mom. But it's very weird because I can't get a good picture of her in my head even though she almost stared into my soul. I just cannot remember what she looks like and I had a pain in my head. We have never seen her since and still wonder what she might have done if I left my friend by herself. Has anyone had a similar experience? Story 6. At the time, I was I think 7 maybe 8 and I was hanging out with my BSF. In my house we had the most awesome basement where we would always hang out. One time, me and my BSF were home alone when we were hanging out. We opened the basement door and walked down the stairs to the basement. In the past we always said we could hear weird noises from the cellar under the basement stairs. It always scared us, but we never thought anything of it. Anyway, we were just playing in the basement home alone. When we heard the noise again, it sounded like a man's voice or SMTH. We were so freaked out, especially since we were home alone. We eventually got up enough courage to open the cellar door and see if anything was there. Nothing was there, so we wiped it off and continued playing. Soon after, we heard it again. Now we were really scared. I told my BSF I would get out my iPad and record, see if anything was there right there. So I grabbed my iPad, opened the cellar door, turned on the cellar light, propped up my iPad and closed the cellar door. We were so scared we ran upstairs. We left the vid recording for ABT 6 minutes. We were scared, but we came back down and opened the cellar door and turned off the video. Scared out of our minds, my BSF and I sat down and watched the video. The video looked normal for ABT 15 seconds until you could hear us walking up the stairs, exiting the basement, when the video just went black. Completely black. The rest of the video was black all the way until you could hear us waking back down the basement stairs when the vid went back to normal. It wasn't like the light went out, but something covered the camera. It was especially weird. BC nothing was in the way of the iPad. I'm still weirded out to this day. Story 7. This just happened, so bear with me here. So for the past few weeks, my outside dog, who's the sweetest dog ever and wouldn't hurt a fly, hasn't been wanting to go to sleep at night and has been barking all night, every night. For context, he happily goes into a big spacious crate filled with his blankets, and this is in an AC-controlled environment. Anyways, as I said, he has been refusing to go in and just sits and barks at stuff and roams around the property barking at something that's been entering my property religiously for the same amount of time that he has been refusing to go to sleep. I've always just deduced that a coyote or something is messing around in the yard, and this was my running theory until last night. So, rewind to last night, I exit my back door like usual to try and get him into his crate, and he refuses. So I figured he just doesn't want to since it's summer and the weather is nice. I returned inside and not even 3 hours later, I was woken up by him barking and growling up a storm. So I tiredly put on my sandals and go outside, and he's in the backyard barking at something. I proceed to yell his name, and he comes running, and something proceeds to make a garbled noise and run away. He comes running to me and sits at my feet, but when I try to take him to his crate, he gets in between my legs and refuses to let me go any further. This dog is heavy and strong, by the way, so he easily overpowers me. So, I proceeded to get back inside and lock up to go to sleep again for the night. I woke up at approximately 8:30 a.m. and went outside to get my dog's food for the morning, along with a fresh bowl of water, and I remembered what had gone on the night before. So, I decided to check out the yard since it was daytime, and as I was searching, I found something that seemed to be footprints leading toward the barn on my property. After leaving the whole day to sit and see what happens, I decided to go in there, and there was a whole bunk up there, sleeping bag, food provisions, and a lot of other stuff. I called the police immediately, and they found the guy trying to get off my property. TLDR, the guy was living on my property for who knows how long without me knowing. Story 8, I'm a married man, M32 and my wife, F31, let's call her Bree. We've met when we were teens, at high school. I was the usual bully that everyone wanted to punch its guts. I would hit kids and make fun of them for no reason, I regret a lot. My wife was more concerned with studies, would speak up to every asshole that talked shit about her. In my young eyes back then, the perfect victim. Until one day at math class, I was 100% sure I knew the answer, but then Bree spoke up. She humiliated me with words, saying the right answers that were the complete opposite of mine. I was angry, with everyone laughing at me as she was praised, but I went quiet. After that, one day, I was getting to school late, until she bumped into me, panicking, her eyes wide and looking everywhere as if she was trying to find out where she was. I raised an eyebrow and asked what happened. She didn't know it was me, panicking, saying she was in the library when everything started to melt. Looking into her pupils, I noticed she was drugged, badly drugged. I asked the obvious, did you take any drugs? And she answered no. I believed, she's the type who hates drugs. I asked if she drank anything. She showed me her water bottle. I don't know how she didn't see the pills on the bottom. I sighed and grasped her chin, trying to get answers from her as she panicked. From afar, I saw my ex-friend, Andrew, coming up to me with a sadistic smile. You found her, he said, laughing. I obviously asked what happened, and he told me something that made my heart sank. I bought some stuff to get revenge on that day from the math class. I tried to keep him away from her, but he insisted on going further. I panicked as Bree started to foam with her mouth, falling on her knees. I didn't know what to do. I just grabbed Andrew by the arm and walked away, leaving her behind. Later, I only heard the screams from students. They found her body on the hall. The commotion didn't stop me from checking on her. The nurses were trying CPR, the paramedics arrived. The principal was furious. Since Bree is orphan, she didn't have a legal guardian to be with her there. The principal looked around and pointed at me, barking at me to go. Damn it all, I thought, it's all my fault. All I could do is go with her. And I did. I stayed with her during her whole recovery, and I'll admit, I felt alive with her. She was funny, made jokes even in her state. I fell in love. Yet, she didn't remember it was me who left her there, almost to die, and I never told her that. I feel guilty. It eats me every day to think she almost died. And it kills me when she says I'm not as bad as everyone says. Nowadays we're together, with a 2-year-old son. I feel self-hatred every day. she almost died, because of me, and she doesn't know. I wonder if she'll ask for divorce if I tell her. She's a strong woman, and I don't want to lose her, but lately I've been having nightmares about it. Story 9. Okay, so this was maybe 2 maybe 3 years back. I was home alone one night. My parents were out buying gifts, I don't really know why, and I let my dog out in the yard, and when I was supposed to get him in he started barking. And when I look out there I see a gray figure running across. And then I thought I was just seeing things. Now a few days after I heard someone knocking on my window, I look out there. I thought one of my friends were pranking me, and I saw nothing, and in case I had to be sure that it wasn't my friend, so I opened the window and looked outside, still nothing. Then I hear a whistle. I close my window as fast as I could. And maybe 2 weeks later me and my friend go to this abandoned house. And we go through a little window. All the doors in are stuck. We smell something very weird. We go over where we saw some black bag, and the bag was stinking like something has been rotting a while. I was hoping it wasn't anything from a human or animal. Right when I was about to open it I hear that same whistle. Me and my friend hide under a table or something like that. We stare there for maybe 15 minutes, and then we hear someone or something running above us, running down some stairs, and I peek a bit and I see someone with gray duct tape all over their body. Not a single spot wasn't covered, and it just stands still for maybe 2 minutes, and then I hear it going back upstairs. We think it's safe, so we go out of our hiding spot, and before we leave we check the back. I know it's stupid to check before leaving, but the smell was so bad we wanted to check it. We cut the bag open with a pocket knife. And we see maybe 20 human fingers, and we run out of there and call 911, and when we had to show them where we saw it we went back in there and they were gone, but there was a jar of blood where it was before, and we look puzzled as hell. But then we go home and then nothing ever happened again. Story 10. True story time. I was about 4 or 5 years old and my parents had just separated. My mom was living in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had my own room, but I preferred to sleep in her bed whenever I was staying with her. Our 2 bedrooms were at the end of a hallway, directly across from each other. Our apartment was on the 1st floor, and I remember that it was in the middle of the summer and my mom had a window open her room, which was directly behind the bed, above the headboard. Anyways, I woke up in the middle of the night and remember sitting up and seeing that our cat was sitting in the door frame of my mom's room. Her door was open and you could partially see into my bedroom. This was strange because our cat was typically always in bed with us. As I was watching him, he walked into my bedroom and meowed. I turned to face my mom and wake her up. In the 3/4 seconds it took her to wake up and ask me what was wrong, we both looked back up in the door frame and there was a man standing by my open door, making his way out of my bedroom. I still don't know how she managed to do it so quickly, but my mother proceeded to pick me up and literally throw me out of the screen window. Again, we were on the 1st floor and it was maybe a 3-foot drop to the ground. She quickly followed and we were able to start screaming for help, and someone called 911. The police came but didn't see any signs of forced entry. Only that our front door was unlocked, which led them to believe the man must have exited that way. The strange thing was that my mom swore up and down that she had locked the door that night, with the deadbolt and chain lock. About a week later she was cleaning the kitchen and opened up our water heater closet and found a notebook with names and drawings, as well as a pair of gloves and some gum wrappers. The police were called again, but all they could do was speculate that the man had been in our house and hid until we were asleep. Story 11. A terrifying, but true story I experienced when I was 12. I moved to my dad's when I was 10 and didn't know anyone in the area, except for the family my dad was friends with. Single mom with 3 kids. Luckily there was a girl a couple years older than me, 12 at the time I met her, and we got to know each other a little over a couple years. We weren't close, but ended up having the same friends. One night my friend Rob was hanging out with her and her younger brother. They happened to be in the house alone because my friend's mom was at work. Which is where this gets terrifying and sad. Her mother has been helping this one lady, through her work, and got to know her fairly well. She found out her sister was in a mental institution and was let out recently. The night Rob is hanging out with my friend, they get a knock on the door. My friend thought it was just their mom. She knocks a certain way when coming in, and answered it without thinking. Rob wasn't supposed to be there and he took off through the window to his house down the road. He never thought twice about it. Wasn't her mom. It was the sister of the lady her mom was helping, and she figured out through talking to her sister where her family lived and her mom's working schedule. She came in, and this is where is don't know details and I'm glad I don't. My friend's younger brother got away to the neighbors to call the police. The lady brutally murdered my friend a week from Christmas. Decapitated her and left her body, naked in a bathtub. Hit her head. They had to look through the presents and I don't know where they found it, but they did. I wasn't allowed to go to her funeral,